On a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you look at the beach in your bathing suit?
7.
From the family feud to a jail cell, an Illinois man stands accused of murdering his estranged wife.
On February 23rd, Rebecca Bliefnick, a 41-year-old mother of 3, was found shot to death in her home.
I'm Anjanette Levy, and welcome to Law and Crime's Sidebar podcast. Rebecca Bliefnick was a nurse from Quincy, Illinois, and described as a beloved boy mom. Family members called police after she failed to pick up her children one day from school last month. They found her shot to death in her home. Police announced that they arrested her estranged husband this week after investigating her murder.
Quincy Police Department detectives and members of the department's emergency response team arrested 39-year-old Timothy W. Bliefnick of Quincy for a no-bond warrant for 2 counts of first-degree murder and home invasion for the murder of Rebecca Bliefnick.
Police said that Bliefnick's death was not a random act of violence. They called it an act of domestic violence. Timothy Bliefnick's Twitter account is full of old posts, some disturbing. In one from 2014, he wrote, "I really want to save a snowball in the freezer and hit my kid with it in July. Not hard, but his mind will explode with that one." Meanwhile, Becky Bliefnick's family has started a GoFundMe page to get money and to raise money to help with her 3 boys. They released a statement that reads in part, "While we remain heartbroken, we are thankful to the Quincy Police Department and all who have worked tirelessly in service of justice for Becky. While the arrest today provides a step toward closure, this journey is far from over and the investigation continues. We are thankful for your continued respect for our privacy as we navigate this next painful chapter. Our highest priority remains protecting and loving Becky's sons, who were the light of her life. As we continue mourning, we will love and care for them in the ways we know she would want." Joining me to discuss the murder of Rebecca Bliefnick and the arrest of her estranged husband for the crime is Jonathan Handel. He's an entertainment attorney and just all-around good guy. Thanks for joining us. Welcome back to Sidebar.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
So we have this guy, Tim Bliefnick, who was on The Family Feud as a contestant. He was in some type of steak eating competition. And now he's kind of looking disheveled. He's in a mugshot accused of murdering his wife. Just thoughts about this right off the bat, Jonathan.
Well, it's a very sad and difficult situation. And what it underlines is a couple of things. One is the great difficulty that women have when there is an estranged and potentially violent husband. The great difficulty that women have in protecting themselves. Women and also not in this case, but often as well, their children, get attacked and murdered, as and what's alleged here, of course, is that the estranged husband, murdered his wife. It's, you can get restraining orders, but they're not, and unless you have the money to have, 24-hour, private security, which, virtually no one does, of course, or the ability to move, geographically, and, it's extremely hard. I think we should mention that one set of, resources, if there are women that are listening to this broadcast, that are in this kind of situation, there are, in many locations, and I don't know in this instance, safe houses and, nonprofit organizations that try to provide an alternative living situation for women and their, and in many cases their young children, to protect them from potential violence. But, how do you reach the decision, even if that resource is available to you? How do you reach the decision that, gee, I have to uproot myself and if applicable, my kids, and, leave my house? How do you know whether the husband is going to, become, cross that line. I think the other thing is also uh, underlines, and this is not to in any shape or form um, excuse what the uh, husband allegedly did, but to point out that we don't do a good job of in this society of figuring out how to teach men in particular anger management and de-escalation. And there's a very the concept of masculinity, especially for people who are working class and who are working physical jobs and so forth, is sort of I own my wife sort of, and I'm the conqueror and all this kind of thing that you know bring these kinds of consequences. And I mean, just to talk about crime generally for a moment, you can't prosecute your way out of crime. You have to both prosecute and also attempt to address root causes, whether it's poverty and robbery, whether it's frustrated toxic masculinity, whether it's bigotry and hate crimes and prejudice against BIPOC and LGBTQ and anti-Semitism and all these kinds of things. Um, there needs to be a combination of you know of velvet gloves and iron fists. Otherwise, you just have a treadmill of crime. And we just coming back to domestic violence, which is again what's obviously alleged here in the extreme. We just don't do a good job of training men in particular, and boys and young men, uh, to respect and to not feel threatened by a strong woman, by a woman who makes more money than they do, by a woman who's decided to end the relationship. It's like, yeah, you have this relationship, and it's sad if it's ending, but that should not be a trigger for violence, as what was alleged here.
Well, and just briefly, I hate to judge a book by its cover, but it appears to me there's a stark difference between the Tim Bliefnick we saw on the Family Feud video and then his mugshot. He's got dark circles under his eyes. He's got long hair. He looks a little disheveled. There's probably more going on here than we know. There's a lot we don't know here. So this police categorize this as a situation of this was a domestic violence type thing. This was a targeted attack. He killed his estranged wife for a reason. So it's incredibly sad. But there's obviously more going on here, Jonathan, than meets the eye. Just and I hate to, as I said, judge a book by its cover, but I can tell there's something going on with this guy that's not just your average run of the mill. Oh, my wife, wants a divorce.
Well, that's right, but it's for men who are invested in control or whatever. It's very threatening, can be very threatening to them when their wife says we're done. um and I mean, there's a whole set of related issues here. I mean, we don't have any idea whether there's any kind of opioid abuse or anything of that sort here, but these kinds of crimes of desperation and um, addiction and suicides and overdosing, there's a desperation economically and gender wise. And you're absolutely right, we don't know exactly what the factors are, here in this alleged situation. Um, but, looking at this through a broader lens, the society, is not dealing with the level of desperation among, among a lot of people, and especially a lot of men. It's not dealing well with that.
I agree with you 100%. Men are often not raised to deal with their emotions. I think we're getting better about that, but they're just not taught to deal with their emotions properly in many respects, and there needs to be something done to address that, and hopefully, that starting at a younger age can help us with issues later on in life. We do want to tell you that there is a domestic violence hotline. It's 800-799-SAFE. That's 800-799-7233. And it's a 24-hour hotline for anyone in need of help. This is an awful case. We hope to learn more information about exactly what happened, but prayers and thoughts to the children and the loved ones of Rebecca Bliefnick. It's just absolutely awful. And those 3 little boys, it's terribly upsetting. Jonathan Handel, thank you so much for being on today to talk with us.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
And that's it for this edition of Law and Crime Sidebar podcast. You can download it on Apple, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts. And of course, you can always watch it on Law and Crime's YouTube channel. I'm Anjanette Levy, and we will see you next time.